House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 6, titled Small Folk, had a lot in it that we need to talk about, and there's one key part of the episode that I bet you missed, and I'm going to explain to you what it is in this video. While we're talking about House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 6, do us a big favor. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought of the episode, what your favorite moments were, what you liked, what you didn't like. While you're doing that, smash that like button, hit the notifications bell for future content, and most importantly, hit subscribe so we can continue to grow our channel. Welcome, everybody, to the Sundowners Club. House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 6. We're going to get into the major beats of the episode, but we're going to start with the intro. We have this tapestry that's been flowing around all season, and every time there's a major event, something gets added to the tapestry. And this week's episode showed us the Battle of Rook's Rest, the Dance of the Dragons. But what looks to be a little bit deceiving is we've got the two dragons, Sunfire and Meleys, that have been killed. One thought to be killed, the other definitely killed. And the dragon above them is Vhagar, but there's a character in the middle that will show you with a sword, and it looks like that character is Aegon. Now, we know that when they carted Meleys' head throughout the streets of King's Landing, they said, "Behold, the traitor's head of Meleys, taken down by King Aegon." So Aegon will have gotten the credit in the histories for this kill, but we know that it was Aemond and Vhagar. So very interesting that the tapestry would show what looks to be Aegon with the sword Blackfire held up high in between the two dragons that have fallen. So pretty interesting tidbit as we lead into this episode. So as we get into the beginning of the episode, we see in the Golden Tooth what looks to be the Lannister army. Jason Lannister, you remember that guy last season, the guy that was courting Rhaenyra? Overconfident, arrogant, pompous. He's a twin, by the way. His brother Tyland is on the small council for King Aegon. And so two very different personalities played by the same actor. But Jason Lannister, cocky, arrogant, typical Lannister, right? And they're going through the Golden Tooth into House Lefford, and they've actually got an actual lion in a cage, which I thought was pretty cool symbolism. The Lannisters want to show their power and their wealth, and the sigil of the house is obviously a lion. So pretty cool callback there, an homage to the Lannisters of Game of Thrones. And so they're setting up their army, and we see that their army is on the march as we open this episode. And Jason Lannister wants Aemond to send himself and Vhagar, and so he sends a raven to King's Landing. Doesn't go very well. Aemond is not happy that he is being summoned with haste, and he takes it out on the small council, and you get the first sense that Aemond is not going to be manipulated by anybody on the small council. He's not his brother. He knows what he wants to do, and he's pretty much instilling fear on the members of the small council, including Jason's twin brother, Tyland. So Jason needs to be careful, and so does Tyland when they're dealing with Aemond. One of the things before we wrap up the small council with Aemond is that he summons the Triarchy. He wants them to end the blockade, and he doesn't care about loyalty. He knows that they're hired hands, not to be trusted, but he wants the best odds at getting them there quickly so that they can end the blockade of King's Landing, thereby solidifying his power as Prince Regent and Protector of the Realm. One of the things he also does is he dispatches Criston Cole to Harrenhal, and you can see the look on Criston's face. He's not looking forward to going to Harrenhal, and he knows that he's lost a lot of troops in the Battle of Rook's Rest, and he's not exactly prepared to face down Daemon Targaryen and Caraxes and whatever armies and soldiers that Damon may be assembling in the Riverlands. So Criston has pretty much a defeated look on his face, but he can't go against the orders of the Prince Regent, so he is headed to Harrenhal. We then cut to Dragonstone, and we have a new hand of the Queen. It's Corlys Velaryon, and he's standing over the painted table, and everybody assembles in the room. The first thing that Rhaenyra does is she summons for Sir Steffon Darkland, and she's found out via the records in the archives of Dragonstone, the library, that Steffon Darkland has dragon blood in his lineage. And so she needs dragon riders, and he accepts the task, knowing the risk, to be able to go see if he can bond with one of the wild dragons and one of the unclaimed dragons to be able to help Rhaenyra in her war to maintain her crown. We then cut to Damon in Harrenhal, and he has a vision. We've been thinking about this for weeks, and we finally see the visions seem to be coming to an end because you can't get any bigger than King Viserys, his brother. And the first vision is Daemon in the throne room in King's Landing, and Viserys is on the throne, and he is chastising Daemon, saying, "Did you say it? Heir for a day." And it cuts back to season 1 when he cast Daemon out. And in this scene, he's yelling at him, he's betrayed, and at the same time, Viserys starts to cry. He feels really defeated by Daemon, and especially at a time when he's lost his son and his wife. And so, as we have that vision for the first time of Daemon confronting his ultimate sense of who he is as a person, the choices he's made, which all comes back to his relationship with his brother Viserys. And this was great to see Paddy Considine in this scene, and it plays into Daemon getting to what we believe is the end of the line in terms of the visions and dreams that he's having, and him coming to grips with the choices that he's going to have to make, either one direction or the other, as we get into the ultimate storytelling that the next season or two is going to be in House of the Dragon, and a lot of the foreshadowing that's going on there. As Daemon wraps up his dream, his vision of Viserys, he wants no more Harrenhal. He walks out of the castle. He's near the weirwood tree. You see Caraxes, who's just on the outside, facing the God's Eye. He's ready to leave, but there's Alice Rivers once again. Is she really there? Is she in Daemon's head? We don't quite know, but she starts talking to him, and he finally seeks counsel for her. She's talking about things that would be hard for her to really know, about Viserys not really wanting to lead and be king, and those that really want to be king or queen and have the crown aren't really suited for it. And she talks about the type of person that Viserys was, and she then listens to Daemon as he seeks her counsel and help, and he needs the Tullys. He needs Grover Tully, and Alice says, "Wait 3 days, do nothing. The winds will shift." And so he goes back into Harrenhal. He's actually listening to Alice, and he's going to wait. Not sure what he thinks is going to happen, but he hesitates leaving. He goes back into Harrenhal, and that's an important scene for what's going to happen later in the episode. We then come back to Dragonstone, and poor Steffan Darkland, he now sees Sea Smoke. They're chanting in Valyrian, singing songs to get Sea Smoke up. And so as Sea Smoke rises up, Steffan Darkland looks like he's about to mount Sea Smoke, and you can see he hesitates. And that's all it takes. Sea Smoke opens his mouth, breathes dragon fire. Bye-bye, Steffan Darkland. And as he dies, you see the look on Rhaenyra's face, almost defeated. She knew she had to take a chance to try something listening to Jace, but this clearly did not work. And so she's got a defeated look on her face, a shocked look on her face, and panic as Sir Steffan Darkland succumbs to the flames, and Sea Smoke flies out of the cave to who knows where, but we will see Smoke later on in this episode. We then cut to Driftmark, and we see Adam of Hull on the docks, and we see Alan as Corlys has summoned him, and Corlys knows that they're close to taking the sea again, and he wants Alan of Hull to be his first mate. And so this is a way for him to bring in Alan of Hull closer to him, give him something that will allow him to raise himself up. And so they've been building to this story for a little while with these two characters and what their relationship to Corlys is. And it looks more and more likely that there is some sort of familiar relationship. And you see Adam of Hull staring at Alan, knowing that he's taken on this duty as first mate to Corlys Velaryon. And so it's building these characters for what's going to happen further down the line. And so a very important scene as Corlys starts to get back in the game as he's the hand of the queen. We then see King's Landing in the propaganda war that Rhaenyra is starting to enact on behalf of Mysaria, and we're in a tavern, and so we see Madame Sylvie and we see Diana, who's been sent there. Actually, she was in King's Landing, but she was the one that Aegon in season 1 abused, and then Madame Sylvie is the connection to Aemond, but they're both in the tavern and they're being employed by Mysaria, and so Ulf the White is overhearing them talk about how all this food and drink is being supplied to the Red Keep, and they're, it's kind of like the French. They're living, eating their cake while the small folk suffer. So it's trying to create that sense of the small folk being so far removed from the nobles in the palace. And Ulf the White hears this. He stares down at what he's eating. He's clearly not happy. And so you got to think that those are going to be ramifications as Ulf the White starts to enter into the bigger story around the Dance of the Dragons. We then come back to Dragonstone again, and we see the beginning of a strange arc for Rhaenyra. She's walking with Lord Celtigar, and he's not so much questioning her. It's really a conversation, but she turns around and slaps him and talks about how they've forgotten to fear her. And so this plays into, as you see another scene in the episode where she's holding up a sword. She's been reading about Visenya, one of the two sister wives of Aegon the Conqueror, a warrior queen. And so you're starting to see Rhaenyra. She's frustrated. Nothing's working for her. And she feels like she's getting restless. She wants to take action. And so she's starting to accept that identity of Visenya, for better or worse. May not be a good decision, but you see what's starting to become the change in Rhaenyra, especially when she turns around and slaps one of the members of her small council for not listening to her and being obedient. And so these are moments that I think are building her character toward, which inevitably is going to be a Visenya warrior type turn. And so we'll see how that plays out for Rhaenyra. We then have a brief scene between Mysaria and Rhaenyra as Rhaenyra starts to listen more and more to Mysaria's counsel. This is the one part of season 2 of House of the Dragon that I really just am not feeling it. Don't really like it. I understand why they're doing it, but Mysaria is having too much of an influential role that doesn't seem like it's earned. I know they're putting time in. They built scenes in the show as she's getting closer to Rhaenyra, but something just seems off in the narrative around that. And that's the one thing this season that I really have not enjoyed, and I've been pretty clear about that. And so we have another scene of Mysaria and Rhaenyra talking and strategy, and Rhaenyra listening to her and starting to not listen to everybody else. And so I think it's important in that regard, but it just doesn't work for me. And so, we skip from that scene and we see Larys, on the other hand, who did a great job in this episode, is the actor and the character, trying to manipulate Aemond, but it backfires on him. Aemond cannot be manipulated. And she says, you know what? I do need a hand that's different than my brother. So go fetch my grandsire. Go fetch Otto. Bring him back here. I need his counsel. He's the hand. And so Larys knows he's lost Alicent. He's lost Aemond. He's got one thing left to play, one card to play. That's he's got to get to Aegon, but he doesn't know the condition that Aegon's in. And so very interesting the dynamics of Larys Clubfoot, who's almost like a Littlefinger and Varys from Game of Thrones combined. And so this is really good story setup, I think, that works really well, as opposed to what I think didn't work well, which is Mysaria and Rhaenyra. Right after that, we see Aemond visit Aegon, and he brings the marble ball from the small council, which symbolizes the power. And he goes in to visit him, and he tells him it was foolish to go up against Meleys. You see that Aegon's in pain, but he can't really speak, and he's there. You see Aemond take the marble ball, and he pushes on Aegon's chest. And I think, to me, that symbolized the weight of the power of the crown, of the Iron Throne, that he's pushing down on Aegon, almost saying, this is too much for you. This will crush you, but not me. And he leaves the marble ball there as he walks out. And so I think that was a really important scene for the power dynamic between Aemond and his brother Aegon. And they're setting up that whole, I'm more fit to be king than you are. We then cut to the Vale, and we have Rhaena with Joffrey, one of Rhaenyra's youngest children, and they're walking around the fields and hills of the Vale. And as they're walking, Rhaena sees something that startles her. It is the bones of sheep, and then she sees burnt grass, and she knows at that point there is a dragon, a large dragon in the Vale. She was not made aware of that. She goes back to confront Jane Eyre and saying, look, there is a large dragon already here. And Jane Eyre just kind of pushes back on her and says, look, Reggio is here to give you passage to Pentos. So basically saying, let's go, you need to leave, and I've honored my commitments. And Rhaenyra is restless. She doesn't have a dragon. You could tell that she feels out of place as she's looking at the children. So what's going to happen next? Is she going to board that ship on the way to Pentos? Is she going to further investigate the dragon that she hasn't seen yet? We don't really know yet, but they've definitely set that up, and that scene serves as a precursor to what's going to happen in episode 7. We then have a brief scene of Alan and Adam of Hull, and really the most important part of this scene is that they acknowledge that they are the sons of Corlys Velaryon. And you have Alan who's shaving his head, and you can see as the hair has started to grow in, it's blonde. So he's covering that up. He doesn't want people to know who he is. And that's the importance of this scene, is that these two brothers know where they come from, and you have one who wants to take advantage of that, and you have another who is hiding from it. And so the dynamic between the two brothers and what their roles are going to be, I think that's what this scene serves to set up. We then have another scene of Rhaenyra on Dragonstone. Jace comes to see her, and she's overlooking the bay, and he basically says, what's going on? And she says that she's seen as a mother figure, daughter and a mother figure, and she wants to be seen as a ruler. And Jace says, you're both. You're my queen, and your ruler, and my mother. And she is almost like she's doing away with the trait of being a mother, and she's accepting, I'm going to be a warrior queen. At that point, Jace says, look, we need Damon and Caraxes. And Rhaenyra doesn't want to hear that. All she says is Damon, Damon, Damon. She doesn't want to hear that. As Jace walks off, he realizes his mom's not listening to him. And then Mysaria walks up. And so another scene to establish that she's isolating herself and she's only trusting Mysaria at this point. The propaganda that Mysaria and Rhaenyra have employed to King's Landing bears fruit, literally, as boats come across the cloudy Blackwater Bay, and the food in the boats with the banners of the black and the red of House Targaryen of Rhaenyra have made its way to King's Landing to the small folk, and they are chanting, long live Queen Rhaenyra, and they're getting the food, they're being fed by her, which then in turn starts a series of events that creates a mob and a riot. And that's exactly the type of propaganda war that Rhaenyra is wanting to fight that was brought to her by Mysaria. At the same time that the boats with the food have come into Blackwater Bay, you have Alicent, who has written letters to Otto, and she asks Sir Orwell, what has happened? Has anybody heard from my father? Nobody has. She's a little concerned about that as she leaves visiting Aegon, and she goes to get Helena. And this is the scene of the episode that I'd be willing to wager that you didn't see or know what it means. And that is, she walks into the room, and Helena is got little creatures that are in cages. They're crickets. There are 3 of them. And we know that Helena has visions, and her visions come true. Most of the time, nobody pays attention to them, but we as the viewer do. And she says one of the crickets has stopped singing. There are 3 crickets. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't want to hear this spoiler, stop watching right now. But I'm going to tell you what I believe to be a spoiler in 3, 2, 1. The 3 crickets in my mind symbolize Aegon, Aemond, and Helena, the 3 children. And one of them stopping singing means that she's foreshadowing that very, very, very soon one of them is going to die, stopping singing. I believe that cricket that has stopped singing is going to be Helena herself, the first of the 3 potentially to die. And so I think it's foreshadowing of Helena and her grief dying by whatever means. We don't know yet, but that is my prediction, that the 3 crickets symbolize 3 children of Alicent that is still in the Red Keep. Not Darren, who is a 4th child that we're going to hear about in just a second that is mentioned in this episode. But I believe that the cricket symbolizes Helena. There's an outside chance that the cricket symbolize some of the wild dragons, but I believe it symbolizes the death of Helena. Okay, now back to our episode. As we have Alicent and Helena visit with each other, and they're going to light candles in the sept, They get marched out because a riot has started, and they're attacked, and they're almost killed. But luckily, they survive. During the time of that riot, we see Hugh himself, the blacksmith, who's trying to save his daughter and his wife, and he sees bags of food being brought by people that have gotten them, and now he's desperate. So he throws somebody down, takes their food. Hugh is going to try to do whatever he needs to do to save his family, and he's got his hands on some food to buy them just a little bit more time. But the events at King's Landing are getting more violent and desperate by the day. We then have a scene where Alicent goes to greet. She really looks like she's almost looking for Kristen Cole, but she sees her brother Gawain, and Gawain is following Kristen Cole to Harrenhal. Don't know if any of these people are going to be returning, so this may be the last time Alicent sees her brother Gawain and or Kristen Cole. So she speaks to Gawain, and as she's doing so, she asks him about her other son, Darren, who is at Old Town, who is a ward of Old Town, and she asks what's he like. And Gawain tells her he's stalwart, he's clever, he's 16 years old. He's the girls like him. You know, he's got musical talents, and he also is good with the sword. But ultimately, he tells her he's kind. And you can see that Alicent is almost sad but relieved in a way, because I think she's trying to figure out, did she do the damage to her children in King's Landing, or did King's Landing do the damage? She's not quite sure, but it makes her feel relieved that she has one of her children that has kindness in them, and that is Darren. And you can bet we're going to see Darren come into play in a big way in the story of the Dance of Dragons. We then have a scene where Larys, on the heels of getting rejected by Aemond, goes and visits his last resort, which is Aegon. And Aegon is somewhat laying up in the bed and wanting more medicine, milk of the poppy. But Larys says, no, you need to get your mind right. And in a moment where he has tears in his eyes, and you see Larys, what I believe is Larys telling the truth about how he was born with a deformity, but his mind had to be his greatest weapon. And he in a way, he's manipulating Aegon, because Aegon is his last card to play to really have power and impact the events of what's going on. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of truth in what Larys is saying, is that, look, we're both broken now. You're broken, I'm broken. But if you have your mind and I have my mind, we can really accomplish things together. So you need me and I need you. And that's what the scene goes to establish. There's desperation in Larys' eyes, but there's also tears. And so I think he's being genuine, at the same time serving his own purpose, because Aegon is going to need someone like Larys to be able to help him navigate what is going to be very dangerous waters at this point, as a near-death and now wounded king, and permanently immobile king as well. We now cut back to Damon and what is the last vision he has, or dream, or haunting of this episode, and it is of Viserys looking at his dead wife Emma's body, and he's sobbing uncontrollably, and Damon is there to tell him, I'm here now. I'm here with you. And it's something that Damon's never done. He's not been there for anybody when there's been loss of life. But in this sequence, he's hugging his brother Viserys, and he's there for him, at least in the dream, in the vision he is, almost like he's coming to terms with those demons, and you know that he loves his brother. And at least in the dream, in the vision, he's communicating that he's here. I'm here for you. And so as he awakens, Simon Strong is talking to him, and he tells him that Grover Tully has died. It's been 3 days. The winds have shifted. And he then mentions that even Alice Rivers had tried to work her skills, but to no avail. And Damon knows that there's something else going on with Alice. And so what is this going to do to change the game for him now that Oscar Tully, the young man that he met earlier in the season, that now is going to be the Paramount? And so he needs House Tully so that he can gain control of the Riverlands. This is a messy situation for Damon, but there's a window now, an opportunity for Damon to make his move. But what's interesting is, after he is told this, he still breaks down and starts crying. He's still impacted by the vision and the dream of his brother Viserys, and he's coming to terms with that. We then have a big scene as we start to get close to the end of the episode. Adam of Hull is on a beach, and here comes Sea Smoke. It looks like he's maybe going to be killing some of the people on the beach, the fishermen, and maybe even killing Adam. Adam runs into the tree line to try to get coverage and hide from Sea Smoke, but he trips and falls. And as he's laying on his back, Sea Smoke lands and he faces down Adam of Hull, but he doesn't kill him. We then cut to the final scene of the episode, extended scene of Rhaenyra and Mysaria. And we know that she has really listened to Mysaria's counsel, and they're having an in-depth discussion. And as they do, Mysaria finally tells her where her scar across her neck came from. She was assaulted by her father. She barely survived. She can't have children. So she's communicating her trust in Rhaenyra, one of the only people in her life she's ever trusted. And as she does, Rhaenyra goes up to her and hugs her, and then they start to kiss. I didn't like the scene at all. I thought that it wasn't earned from a story perspective. You know, you have Rhaenyra, who's a married mother, cheating on her husband. Yes, he's gone and he's in Harrenhal, but he's still trying to raise an army for her and dealing with his demons. But it just didn't feel right. It felt like you could have accomplished the bond without having it turn physical. It just didn't work for me. Not saying we haven't seen those other things in Game of Thrones and other scenes in House of the Dragon before, but this scene just didn't work. But this is what they're establishing with Mysaria and Rhaenyra. Who knows where they'll go with this? And so as they wrap up that scene, the door opens and Sea Smoke has been spotted with a rider, and Rhaenyra has a panicked look on her face and anger. She mounts Syrax to go find out who the rider is. And the episode ends. So, final thoughts. This was my least favorite episode of Season 2. My least favorite episode of Season 1 was the episode where Rhaenys came through the floor of the dragon pit, killed thousands of people during the coronation. But this was my least favorite episode of Season 2. There were scenes and things that I liked about this episode. I really liked the scenes with Viserys and Daemon, and I liked the scenes with Sea Smoke and Adam, and Larys with Aegon. There was much to like, but it seemed choppy in terms of the narrative flow, and we have a lot to accomplish with 2 episodes left. This is an 8-episode season, not 10. So I felt like coming off of last week's episode, there was more to do here that we just did not get accomplished. And so for me, it didn't work as well. Still, things to like. I like Season 2. This was just a little bit of a miss for me. Let me know what you think. Did you like the episode? Did you catch the Easter egg and the foreshadowing of the cricket that stopped singing and what that meant? Let me know what you think in the thoughts below. While you're leaving a comment, smash that like button, hit the notifications bell for future content, and most importantly, hit subscribe so we can continue to grow our channel in TCB.